When you look at a map of India, it seems pretty solid, right? Permanent, even. But what if I told you that map isn't set in stone at all? In fact, it's constantly changing. Today, we're going to dive into the living, breathing story of India's internal borders, a story that wasn't shaped by outside forces, but by the incredible pressures of language, culture, and politics from within.
So, here's a puzzle for you. When India became independent, it started with 14 states. Today, it has 28. How in the world did that happen? Well, the answer is about so much more than just drawing lines on a piece of paper. It's about the fundamental question of how you hold a country as diverse as this one together.
And this is where we are today, 28 states and 8 union territories. But looking at this map is kind of like skipping to the last page of a book. To really get it, we need to go all the way back to the beginning.
So where does this whole story of redrawing the map begin? Well, the first, and maybe the most powerful piece of the puzzle was language. I mean, just think about it for a second. How do you possibly build one single, unified nation when your people speak hundreds of different languages? That was the challenge.
Pretty soon, a really powerful slogan started to catch fire. One language, one state. It's a simple idea, and it's compelling. But for India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, it was absolutely terrifying. You have to remember, he had just seen the country tragically ripped in two by religion during partition. So the idea of dividing it up again, but this time along linguistic lines, it felt like playing with fire, like it would just tear the young nation apart.
But then, one single event changed the entire game. In 1952, an activist named Poti Shrulamulu started a hunger strike. His demand? A separate state for people who spoke Telugu. He protested for 58 days, and tragically, he died. Well, his death lit a fuse. The outrage and protests were so widespread, so massive, that the government just couldn't ignore the issue any longer. This moment led directly to a new commission in 1953, and then finally to the big one, the States Reorganization Act of 1956, which was about to redraw the map of India for good.
And the result of that act? A brand new map. It laid out 14 states and 6 union territories, almost all of them based on language. And you know which was the very first one created? Andhra Pradesh, for the Telugu speakers. So yeah, the very idea that Nehru had been so afraid of was now the official policy of the country.
Okay, so the policy is now in place. But what did this actually look like on the ground? Let's take a quick tour and see how this principle started creating some of the states we all know today.
First up, let's head to Western India. This is a classic example of what happens when you have one huge, multilingual state that sooner or later just has to be divided. It's a tale of two languages. So, in 1960, the huge state of Bombay was split right in two. It was pretty straightforward, actually. The areas where most people spoke Gujarati, that became the new state of Gujarat. And the areas where Marathi was the main language, you guessed it, that became Maharashtra. A clean split, right down the linguistic line. All right. From the west, let's jump over to the north. Just a few years later, we see almost the exact same story play out, proving once again just how powerful language was in deciding political geography.
In 1966, it was Punjab's turn. The state was basically split 3 ways. The Punjabi-speaking heartland remained as Punjab. A brand new state, Haryana, was carved out for the Hindi speakers. And the mountainous regions? They were given to what was then the Union Territory of Himachal Pradesh. Once again, language was destiny.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about states, but you've probably heard me mention this other thing a few times, union territories. So what's the deal with those? They're a really fascinating and important exception to the whole rule of statehood. So what exactly is a union territory? Well, the easiest way to think about it is this. States run themselves. They have their own elected governments. But a union territory, or UT, is run directly by the central government in New Delhi. They're sort of like federal districts. The key difference really comes down to who's in charge. In a state, the people elect their own government, which is led by a chief minister. A UT, on the other hand, is managed by an administrator or a lieutenant governor, who is appointed by the central government. It's a totally different power structure.
So why even have them? Well, there are a bunch of different reasons. Sometimes it's about strategic importance, like the Andaman and Nicobar Islands way out in the ocean. Sometimes it's because it's the national capital, like Delhi. Others exist to protect a unique history and culture, like Puducherry, which was a former French colony. And sometimes they're just clever political solutions, like Chandigarh, which actually serves as the shared capital for two different states, Punjab and Haryana.
Now, it would be really easy to think, okay, they figured all this stuff out back in the 50s and 60s and the story's over, but that's not even close to being true. The reality is, India's map is a living document. The ink on it is never really dry.
Let's just fast forward to our own time, to 2014. A brand new state, Telangana, was carved out of Andhra Pradesh. And you have to love the irony here, right? Andhra Pradesh, the very first state that was created because of that language movement, was now being divided itself. It just goes to show you that identities are complex and they evolve over time.
And then, just a few years ago, in 2019, came one of the most dramatic changes to the map in modern history. The state of Jammu and Kashmir had its statehood revoked. It was then split and reorganized into two new union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. It was a huge move and a powerful reminder that the power to redraw India's map is still very real and very active.
So, India's map is so much more than just geography. It's a living story of its people, its politics, and its constant search for unity in all its diversity. For over 70 years, these lines have been drawn and redrawn, shifted and changed. And that leaves us with one last thought. If this is the story of the map so far, what does the map of the future look like?